Have you ever been told you're a natural at something? Or, maybe the opposite, that you weren't. For the longest time, that was the story we all bought into about success. You either have the talent or you don't. But today, we're going to dig into a totally different and honestly a much more powerful idea. It's called grit, and it might just completely change how you think about your own potential. So let's just kick things off with a pretty big question. What if this obsession we have with natural ability, with finding the quote-unquote smartest person in the room, is actually the very thing that's holding us and our teams back from doing our best work? I mean, for decades, this idea was basically gospel. You had top consulting firms like McKinsey preaching that companies live or die based on their ability to find and keep these A players. It was this mad dash to find the most gifted, the most brilliant, the most naturally talented people on the planet. And boy, does this quote show you where that kind of thinking can lead. At the infamous company Enron, this obsession created a really brutal system they called rank and yank. Every single year, they would just fire the bottom 15% of their employees. It didn't matter how well you actually performed, just how you stacked up against others. And that culture? Well, it ended up rewarding cheating over actual hard work and played a huge part in one of the biggest corporate meltdowns in history.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What if the real secret to high achievement isn't some gift you're born with? What if it's something you build?
And this brings us to the absolute heart of what we're talking about today. It's time to forget everything you've heard about talent being the end-all be-all. There's a new formula for success, and you guessed it, it's all about effort.
The key ingredient here is something psychologist Angela Duckworth calls grit. Now, we're not talking about a short, intense burst of energy. No, this is about stamina. It's about treating your life and your goals like a marathon, not a sprint. It's that ability to just keep putting one foot in front of the other, day in, day out, especially on the days you really don't feel like it.
Okay, so check this out. This is how Angela Duckworth breaks it all down. Talent times effort, that equals your skill. Makes sense, right? But that's only step one. To get to actual real-world achievement, you have to take that skill you've built and multiply it by effort again. And that's the big aha moment here. Effort counts twice. It's the magic ingredient that turns what you could do into what you actually do. So that's the theory, but what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's dive into some incredible stories of people who lived and breathed this idea of perseverance.
Let's take a look at Jeff Gettleman. For more than a decade, he had this one super specific goal. He wanted to be the East Africa bureau chief for the New York Times. And his journey, it wasn't some firework that just exploded into success overnight. It was this long, winding road. He was just grinding it out, year after year. His passion wasn't some fleeting feeling. It was his compass, guiding him through a decade of tough, sometimes discouraging work to get exactly where he wanted to be.
All right, now for another story. This is David Luong. When he was a freshman in high school, he took a placement exam and his scores just weren't high enough for the accelerated math class. And based on that one test, he basically got a label stamped on him, not ready.
But David? He just didn't buy it. He didn't let that label define him. So what if he wasn't a natural at math? He knew he could be a hard worker. So for years, he just kept showing up, putting in the effort day after day. And all that sustained work, it eventually led him to a PhD in mechanical engineering from UCLA. Now, get this. The boy who was told he wasn't ready for advanced math is now, quite literally, a rocket scientist. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. It's just an incredible reminder that your effort over a long period of time can lead to places that some early assessment of your talent could never, ever predict. And this is the part that gets really exciting, because grit isn't some fixed trait that you're either born with or you're not. It's a skill, and just like any other skill, it's something you can actually learn and get better at. So let's talk about how. So it all starts up here, in your head. This comes from the researcher Carol Dweck. On one side, you've got the fixed mindset, this belief that your abilities are basically set in stone. But on the other, you've got the growth mindset, the belief that you can always get better with effort. And that belief is the absolute foundation of grit. You've got to believe you can grow before you'll ever put in the work to actually do it. See, a growth mindset opens the door to what's called deliberate practice. This isn't just about, mindlessly putting in the hours. No, this is a super focused, systematic way of getting better. First, you set a really clear, specific goal. Then you concentrate with everything you've got. Third, and this is key, you get immediate feedback on what's working and what's not. And finally, you reflect on that feedback, you tweak your approach, and you do it all over again. That's how you turn effort into real skill. Okay, so this brings us to our final and maybe the most important idea of all. Grit isn't about some single heroic moment where you push through. It's about facing the challenge every single day. Just take it from Ta-Nehisi Coates, a writer who won a MacArthur Genius Grant. You'd think a genius would have it easy, right? Well, listen to what he says. For him, success has nothing to do with being brilliant. It's about constantly, relentlessly engaging with failure. He describes his process, and it almost sounds like a poem. He says the real challenge of his work is to look at the page and just see your own imperfections staring back at you. And what do you do when you see all that terribleness? Well, you don't quit. But you don't burn yourself out trying to fix it all at once either. You just accept it, and you go to bed. Because the real magic, the real work, it happens the next day. You wake up, you face those same flaws all over again, and you start to refine them. And that's the loop. You make it a little bit better, not perfect, just a little less horrible. And then you go to bed again, ready to do it all over tomorrow. That right there is the essence of grit. It's this daily, relentless, humble cycle of effort and refinement. So when you boil it all down, this whole idea comes back to you. We all have something we're trying to get better at, right? Whether it's in our job, a hobby, or even our relationships. The real question then isn't, how much talent do I have? The question is, what are you willing to work on? What's the horribleness you're willing to show up for and refine tomorrow?